ISIS and their most wanted today on the world. I'm Marco Werman. 4 friends from the Syrian city of Raqqa decided to defy ISIS, and ISIS made one of them pay a heavy price.
They gave him this choice, which was just a horrific dilemma. Do you choose your dad or do you choose your friends?
Plus, the man who started an online campaign to keep fellow Somalis from making the expensive and often deadly journey to Europe.
I would prefer to die in my home country than to be washed away by the Mediterranean Sea.
And at a pastry shop in Lisbon, a recipe so secret, so delicious, that the 3 bakers never fly together.
Not because we're afraid that the plane crashes, it's because we need someone here because we never close.
Those stories plus 30 years after Chernobyl, today on The World. Glad you could join us today. The phrase most wanted, usually that makes us think of bad people doing bad things. The FBI's most wanted list includes murderers and drug dealers. Bad guys also have their most wanted, though, and that's where we're going to start the show today. My partner at the BBC, Chloe Hadjimateou, has a new radio documentary called Islamic State's Most Wanted. It's about 4 young men from the Syrian town of Raqqa, often referred to as the capital of ISIS. But these 4 men dared to defy ISIS when the militant group took control of Raqqa. And Chloe Hadjimateou says one of them, a man named Hamoud, was the crazy driving force of the foursome.
He was quite manic. He was a real personality, according to them. Extremely funny, charismatic, speaking all the time, jumping all over the place. He was really one of the driving forces behind the protests during the Arab Spring in Syria. He was instrumental in mobilizing loads of the protests that took place in Raqqa. A real big personality, was not intimidated by any kind of authority.
Right. When the democracy protest started, that was 2011. ISIS doesn't get to Raqqa kind of till about 2014. Takes over the town. They impose their dress code. They ban alcohol, cigarettes, even music. And then Hamoud and his friends come together. They start this graffiti campaign, but Hamoud seems most comfortable online, not doing graffiti on walls. What did he actually do online?
He's kind of a weird combination between fearless activist and dweeby nerd who just sits and spends loads of his time online. He, right back from when he was in high school, apparently, he hacked into the Syrian state's computers and got exam results for his fellow high school students and published them before the Syrian government had a chance to do so. And these young men were protesting at first anonymously, and they became citizen journalists in effect because nobody was covering what was going on in their city, and they felt that these were historic times. They began to record and video and photograph what was going on and upload this material onto social media, and Hamoud was one of the leading guys doing this under a false name in the beginning. Once Raqqa was liberated from the regime, or once the Syrian government lost control of Raqqa and a whole medley of groups took over, they felt that there was a certain amount of freedoms. They started using their names online. International media began picking up their material. By the time Islamic State took over, there was a very obvious massive clampdown on activists and citizen journalists. And Hamoud and the other members of his group who were known, publicly known, who'd used their names, were forced to flee the city. But they wanted to carry on what they were doing, their work, their citizen journalism. So they moved across the border to Turkey, and they began managing a group of journalists who weren't known, who were working undercover, in effect, within the city of Raqqa.
Yeah,
but it's easier for them.
It's pretty dicey, isn't it? And there's one moment where somebody's videotaping on a cell phone and almost gets caught by ISIS. It's really, really harrowing.
It's very dangerous what they're doing, but they lost somebody quite early on. One of their founding members was caught by ISIS going through a checkpoint with a laptop full of incriminating evidence, and he was executed. And it came as a massive blow to the group, and they started taking huge measures to cover themselves. So Hussam, one of the main men in the group, was filming an execution in Raqqa, and an ISIS guy came up to him and said, "What are you doing? Let me see your phone." Very luckily, they have very clever ways of hiding everything they do behind sort of different kind of walls within their mobile phones. So it's impossible to access unless you have very specific passcodes. So all this ISIS man could see were photos of al-Baghdadi, the ISIS leader, and other jihadist songs and speeches. And so he got away with it. But it was pretty hairy.
So as you say, Hamoud and his friends, they flee to Turkey. Then ISIS kidnaps Hamoud's father back in Raqqa, and they release a video showing his dad and other captives dressed in orange jumpsuits in a dark room. There's a light that